Punishment in the Pennsylvania system. Punishment can be justified through the means of five theories: restoration, rehabilitation, deterrence, and incapacitation and retribution. Restoration has been fairly foreign concept to the United States penal system. Myth and law describe the restorative justice is the process of returning to their previous condition all parties involved in the affected by the original misconduct, such as the perpetrator of the crime takes responsibility for their action and reaches out the victim to make amends. There is no inclination that the Pennsylvania system was concerned with restoration. Those imprisoned at Pennsylvania were not required to or even encouraged to reach out to those they had wronged. So, res- res- restoration during those uh, they this punishment is that they were being like what I mentioned a while ago. This system of punishment is inmates are being given a task to work during the days uh, as an they are as an condition to them to uh, to restore their offense. So this restoration, what the victims, uh, what the victim needs is the responsibility of the offenders. So the offenders is required uh, to have service to the victim or to the whole community, so that there it is one of the payments for the crime that the offenders committed to the victim. So that is what the restoration and the rehabilitation refers to reforming criminals. The Pennsylvania system emerged with the ideas that solitary confinement would help to reform prisoners, as it was believed at the time was society should be able to cure criminals by separating them from corrupting influences. This was not the case, not surprisingly. Starving humans of social conduct resulted in a negative and mental effects. So, taking into the consideration, the Pennsylvania system include in ill health in the inmates, and that is tended to make inmates insane. It is clear that the Pennsylvania system failed at being rehabilitative. Moreover, Rutam quote that legislative report which clearly stated that if the purpose of prison was to make the prisoner a better member of society, it was failing at its goal. Ultimately, rehabilitation is meant to ensure the criminals return to the society as a reformed and function functional members of the society. But solitary confinement ensures the opposite result. So, rehabilitation is one of the important inside the prison where the inmates were being at the rehab. They are what they need. Uh, they are being sustained by the inside the prison in the so that they will be so that they if these inmates return to the society, they will be a functional members. So they are giving different kinds of programs, training, educational. That's what the rehabilitation punishment does. Deterrence has been a goal and result of punishment throughout the most punishment system. Pennsylvania not include. Deterrence is described as reducing deviant behavior in the society through threat of punishment. So the actual effectiveness of deterrence is difficult to assess. That the Pennsylvania system emerged in the time when one goal of punishment it was deterrence. Certainly, it is conceivable that recidivism was reduced at least somewhat for persons who had committed crimes and endured the loneliness of the Pennsylvania system. So, deterrence is to deter a person from recidivism of the crime. So, it deterrence can reduce deviance behavior to the society. Criminals or offenders are being separated to the society so that to avoid any uh, recidivism of crime in the society. Stopping perpetrators from committing a crime in the future is known as specific deterrence. So they are being forced to stop committing crime in the society to avoid harm or any damages in the society, in the properties also. So perhaps the unlawfulness of solitary confinement for months or even years ensured that prisoners never wanted to go back to the prison, which in return to stop them from committing crimes again. So inside the prison, they are being punished. They are being inside the prison. They feel that it's very hard to it's very difficult when you are in inmates, so that they were realized that if they will commit a crimes, um, they again experience the what they have experienced when they are inside the prison. So enable them to not to commit a crime. By the time they are inside the prison, the punishment is fit to them so that they will not commit again a crime. Pennsylvania system deterred the general public. General deterrence from committing crimes is more difficult to determine. As Amit and Lou discuss, people may simply have no interest or need to commit a crime and therefore do not. As such, threat of imprisonment is not to stop people from deviant behavior. So although punishment it depends on the people. If the punishment is harsh but the people are just the offenders are they do not mind, if they do not mind the punishment, they will still going to commit a crime and go back to the prison. uh, so in this slide, general deterrence in the Pennsylvania system was about to effective as today's prison system. That is true, the threat of prison may stop some people from committing crime. There are other reasons why a person does not engage in a criminal activity. In short, the Pennsylvania system promotes some amount of deterrence for both former prisons and the general population as a whole. So those former prisons has an experience inside the prison system, and they and also to those people who are not experienced in prison, they will promote an amount of deterrence for whole society, for the whole population in the society, so that it is one way to avoid punishment and also the crime. So incapacitation is decreasing an individual's ability to move, specifically in order to stop a person from committing a crime. Seeing as the Pennsylvania system was a prison and moreover one which initially housed inmates in the single cells. So incapacitation is they have a space in every inmates, one cell one inmate. Incapacitation was certainly accomplished. The only harm that a prisoner could do to someone was himself. So if they were experiencing stress or anxiety inside the prison because they're experiencing this kind of punishment system, they can harm themselves if they are experiencing depressed. Other commit suicide. So and even the option was limited. For instance, Rutam displays a picture of a prisoner restrained with the arms behind his back and the iron gag, writing to maintain order and to command obedience from the inmates. So they are being both uh, restrained with his arms behind his back. Prison officially were prepared to use cruel punishment, not that the prison did serve the incapacitate the offender, preventing him from the committing crimes during his stay. So prisoners were readily restrained as need to be in a already solitary state, so they are prepared for the solitary confinement. This system was perhaps incapacitation at its the most potent, having prisoners removed from society, restrained from physical and verbal contact with humans, and in some cases immobilized so as to stop them from causing harm to themselves. So lastly, retribution is described by Mead and Lu as a eye for an eye schema, such the prisoner gets what he or she deserves. So what the prisoners deserves is they can get it inside the prison. In this sense, retribution helps the victims feel sense of justice or, or perhaps even revenge. So they are provided in the inside the prisons to feel the justice. And however, the Pennsylvania system treats every prisoner virtually the same solitude in imprisonment. So some who had been wrong maybe have felt better knowing that criminals was temporarily no longer an active member of society. The Pennsylvania system did not allow for revenge. So, until nowadays, revenge is prohibited in every prison system. Uh, Enforced punishment that is crime. It is likely that some among the deviant suffered less because of the prison, but some may have suffered more. A number of prisoners have previously would have been shamed before their neighbors and them left to resume their lives instead spent years in cell. Retribution was not a factor in punishing criminals in the Pennsylvania system. Most received some amount of solitary prison time. Concern was not with the victims. So, forms of punishment. So, forms of punishment. So, specific and general deterrence. So, forms of punishment involves also the deterrence, retribution, incapacitation, restoration, and rehabilitation. Deterrence prevents uh, future crime by frightening the defendant or the public Two types of deterrence are specific and general deterrence. Specific deterrence applies an individual defendant. When the government punishes an individual defendant, he or she is theoretically less likely to commit another crime because of fear at another similar or worse punishment. General deterrence applies to the public large. When the public learns of an individual's defendant punishment, the public theoretically less likely to commit crime because of fear of the punishment the defendant experienced. When the public learns, for example, that an individual defendant was severely punished by a sentence of life in prison or death penalty, this knowledge can inspire the deep fear of the criminal's persecution. So, deterrence, when in society, they have also to deter people around the society, not to deter like to punish, but to give knowledge about what what punishment would they experience if they commit a crime inside the prison. So different types of punishment in the context of criminal law. It begins by considering the most common theories of punishment. So retribution, deterrence, rehabilitation, and incapacitation. Attention turns a physical punishment with an emphasis on the death penalty and removal of an offender from the territory through punishment. And it also examines imprisonment as a form of punishment. So, the most common punishment of offenders who commit crime is imprisonment. Like like now, like nowadays, if you commit a crime, you'll be punished and you'll be in a prison for it takes a years or months for you to get out of the prison. Along with the probation and the community supervision, the establishment of drug course aims at rehabilitating instead of incarcerating non-violent drug offenders and financial sanction of or fines. So there are fines or uh, piansa in piansa if if you commit a crime, if it depends on the court if you can have fine for your crime committed uh, violation. So incapacitation, so this prevents future crime by removing the defendant from society. Example of incapacitation are the incarceration, house arrest, or execution pursuant to death penalty. So if you commit a crime and you're going to house arrest, prison, and the worst is you'll be pursued to death penalty. So death penalty is a very a worst punishment. Rehabilitation prevents future crime from altering the defendant's behavior. Example of rehabilitation include educational and vocational program, treatment center placement, and counseling. So this what I mentioned a while ago. This punishment is a better punishment or good punishment for any inmates or offenders because they have treatment inside the prison. Well, they will be experience counseling or educational so that if you return to the community you will be you will be uh, you will be useful or your life would be change during your return, and there's no reason for you to commit a crime again. The court can combine rehabilitation with incarceration or with a probation or parole. In some states, for example, uh, non-violent drug offenders must participate in rehabilitation in combination with probation rather than submitting incarceration. This lightens load of jails and prison while lowering recidivism, which means